Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. Maybe it's good evening wherever you're watching us worldwide. My name is Dan Vaughn. We're glad you're along. Welcome to Baseball's Best Mate. All year long, we roll this thing. Actually, we do this little labor of love every week. We're glad you're along. How about let's roll the open here in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. TBA, it's on the air now. Here we go.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want with Paul Morgan and Dan.
And we are glad you're here. Dan Vaughn with you. Paul Morgan will be joining me in just a moment. I'm bringing that down there. I had a little producing on the fly here as I unmute his mic and bring him on. He's having his morning cup of coffee. It's good morning to you in the West. It's good evening in North America. We tie the knots, connect the dots, however you want to say it. Baseball's Best Mates on the air. Paul, my friend, my partner, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, DV. It was almost 100 degrees here yesterday, so it's almost like spring is very much in the air. It's almost like it's baseball time, and of course it's rolling right around for the state league shortly. But hay fever season as well, so the antihistamines are on high demand. But the eyes are red, but it's springtime, DV. It's springtime. Beautiful morning this morning, walking the pup, but.
It is springtime here in the Metroplex. It looks like springtime in Texas. It's a beautiful fall day. We were in the, I guess, low 80s today, but it's sunny out there right now as the evening dusk upon us. And the wife was out walking the dog a few minutes ago. But
yes,
beautiful day. Go ahead.
I was going to say, before we start, we must acknowledge Gay Marie, your better half. Happy birthday for yesterday.
Yes,
big time birthdays in the Vaughan household, EV.
Yes, we had a big day on Wednesday. We're going to celebrate more this weekend, but yes, happy birthday to WD-40. Love you, babe. She'll be back home in a minute. This show's a little bit. I don't want to. Okay, if the ABL, let's just say the bubble in New Zealand's going from 9 to 7. This is kind of what this show's going from 9 to 7 innings tonight, maybe even 5. We're going to get a rain delay, and we don't have a lot as far as guest wise to give you. We're going to give you that next week. But we do have, and I thought because there's a lot of transactions this week, and I say transactions, a lot of player moves in the ABL, I thought we'd be good to give you guys, because I often refer to, and I realized this yesterday, I was doing my Kansas City T-Bone show, and the T-Bones had just finished the season, of course, not playing, but we'd already gotten some transactions, which were in the hot stove, the word hot stove. And I reference the word hot stove a lot. And I realized that probably I've not explained that to you folks. And I went through a whole thing with my T-Bone Faithful North America yesterday about what is the hot stove. So I'm going to give you a short video in a moment on the origins of the hot stove. So when you hear me talk about hot stove, and we're coming out of the hot stove in the Australian Baseball League. We're in the last couple of months, really, of the hot stove. So the winter into spring, and hope springs eternal. We're going to talk about that in a moment. I get that as well. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of player news. I mean, they're left and right. I mean, it's just they keep coming to you. We won't go into a lot of detail with. We're going to go through the details with those, and also kind of give you guys a chance to ask your questions and comments through the show and all that. And I threw this question out to the faithful in Kansas City, and I'm going to throw it out to you folks watching us across Australia and across North America. So far, from what you've seen, if you've gone to the ABL tracker, or if you follow your favorite team, or you're watching the ABL, who's winning the hot stove? Who is the team right now winning the hot stove league? Because right now, there's always a winner. There's always a couple teams that finish the bottom of the hot stove who wind up usually, and the way it works, usually the hot stove loser wins the whole thing. That's kind of how it works. So that's our show today, and it gives you a little overview. Glad you guys are along. I guess I'll roll right into it, partner. I do believe you can hear this. I'm going to put this on the screen for you guys. Got a little production value too for you as well. So I'm going to roll this video, and I'm going to put it off, put it on the screen here for you guys. But this is a little DV, kind of taking you guys to class a little bit, little educational for you folks here on Baseball's Best Mate, Talking Baseball Australia Live. Let's go ahead and roll the video. And this is actually, just to set this up for you guys, this came off the Steakhouse which was taped yesterday and aired yesterday live in North America, the T-Bone Show. So you're going to see the different graphics. So don't freak out. You're still watching the show, but I'm going to go ahead and give that to you right now. So let's go ahead and pull up the screen. And there we go. Here is a little lesson from DV. A hot stove refer to the actual was not the actual baseball season, and still not. Although the hot stove could be carried over into, well, it kind of heats up near the trade time. Sometimes the first few weeks of the season. I guess the hot stove could kind of hot stove any time when you make a trade, but in general, the hot stove is the all-encompassing term for the baseball season in the wintertime, when the off season, basically what it is. And I put a couple pictures up here. Here's one. Here's a cartoon. This one goes back, I believe this one here dates to, I believe around the early, this is around 1913, I believe. And you can see right there, this is a cartoon that was made. There's a baseball fan. He's sitting there next, let me pull the graphic down so you can see it. You see the baseball fan. He's the guy on the left. That's BBFAN. The guy with his hands out. He's on the left of your screen, hat on, hands out, kind of warming his hands. And the hot stove says, "Oh, that ought to produce some hot air." And you've got the two gentlemen walking in, dressed in suits of the time. The derbies and that look from the turn of the last century. One says American League meetings. He's got a wrapped up. Well, it's actually not wrapped up. It's just pieces of wood. It says American League meetings. The other one says trade talk and managerial changes. And that's what's on that. I don't know if you guys can see that on the screen, but there's an idea of what that is. And that's cartoon number one. The other photo I'm going to show you guys, this is one from around the same time. And this was a photo, obviously a photo op that was staged as well. Let me see if I can put this up on the screen for you guys as well. You can see that. You can see these are Red Sox players sitting around. One of them's got a lumber in his hand. He's going to put some hot, but going to put some lumber into the stove there. You got some players sitting around. What looks like maybe a baseball executive in his overall, or not his overall. He's got his suspenders on, and the players are sitting around, staying warm around the hot stove. So a couple of visuals there to give you. But according to the Dickinson Baseball Encyclopedia, one of my properties downstairs, the first occurrence of the hot stove was actually in 1908 is when this happened. First use in 1908 that the New York Giants will win the hot stove, the fans getting something to talk about when the hot stove league opens this season. And apparently the Giants have maybe not done so well the previous year, but the Sporting Life in September 19th of 1908 says the situation was better for the fans because it looked like the Giants could win the hot stove off season. So that's the first use of the hot stove. And what it references is really back in the day, let's go back before radio, when newspaper was your best way to get your information. You would gather around either you had the town crier, obviously was the original hot stove, but oftentimes folks in small towns, even rural communities, even big cities, would go to the local watering hole, the local Five and Dime, the local supply store, whatever it is, and there'll be a stove in the middle, and they'd all sit around the hot stove, have a cup of coffee, put some wood on the fire, and talk about the events, maybe talk about politics and talk about whatever was going on in society. That's thus the term hot stove. It's what people would do. They would sit around in the wintertime and discuss, hopefully we have a good spring, we'll have a good crop, or hopefully the election goes our way, or whatever the case may be. That's the original visual, is that folks in the wintertime, especially in northern climes, would sit around the hot stove, warm themselves with talks of better days or good days, or maybe it was in this case, when we're talking about baseball, talking about better days ahead when the spring and summer come. So that's the whole term of hot stove. And I did not realize. I just kind of thought my thought was it threw wood in the fire. You throw wood on the hot stove fire. Let me give you another shot of that one again too here. I just kind of thought you were throwing wood on the stove. You kind of baseball was the wood and it kind of burned and got people all excited. Yes and no. The wood was to keep the engine burning, to keep you guys excited about the game, keep you guys in tune with your ball club, and you threw that hot stove wood on there, player trades, manager signings, comings and goings of the rosters around the league. Who looks better this time of year than others? And that's where it all came from. But that goes back to the turn of the previous 2 centuries, when folks in communities all across the country would sit around, warm their hands by the winter fire, chat about the day, and also, oh, by the way, the hot stove baseball league, which also in hockey there's actually a television and radio program in hockey that's for years has also been called the hot stove. So it goes back. A couple of things too. There were, you see the cartoon there. That was actually that one came out of the Spokane Washington Press back in 1909 is when that one was. But it was interesting to see just some of the notes I dug up on this whole thing that the hot stove really had more of a meaning than I realized. I mean, I realized it was a symbol, but there's certain things in baseball you kind of just, I kind of know that. I know that term means hot stove in baseball, but in reality, it is the hot stove. And I want to close with this here. And actually, you know what? I'm going to table this. You know what? I'll read it now. Why not, right? I'll read it now because I got something else for you guys to close with. Okay, here is this poem that was published in 1910 in the Washington, D.C. Sunday Star, and it's called the Hot Stove League. And it closes with these lines, and I'll read these lines to you. I've read these poems before to you guys, but here are the lines here. Let me read this to you. Let me kind of pull this up so you guys can get a better look at my face here. What if the plays are built of smoke and laughed to scorn by men? They have to but light their pipe to play them or again. There are no dubs in the hot stove league. Every guy is a star, by Jove. I'm not sure who Jove is. For every galoot slams the ball in snoot around the old hot stove, I'll let them play their games and dreams with never a fault or bull. With one hand grabs of double plays and home runs with bases full. But what a corking team we'd have if we signed every cove. And they'd all play ball all like they do in the fall around the old hot stove. Thus, the hot stove was something you always win. So back in the 1900s, the fans were the same way they are now. You always look great on paper in November, December, and on to January, February, March. Maybe not so good in July and August, but the hot stove, you're always a winner as hope springs eternal the spring. But a couple of cool things there. And just, again, a hot stove could be politics, weather, but in general, it talks about the hot stove of baseball. But that's where the first mentions and also the origins of the hot stove. That's today's Wednesday's Wisdom here on the show. Well, there you go, folks. You're smarter. You've been educated. I put my professor's cap on, and that's the hot stove. But it's funny because the hot stove actually it's going on right now because I mentioned December. It's going to maybe go on in December. But partner, I hope that you got a little something out of my professor. I was at school today teaching, so I got my school teaching clothes on. So I hope that you had a little bit of a professor's feel. Did I look professorly, or did I look like a complete joke?
No, you'd be getting all the respect at school right now, DV. But I like the cartoon part where it says creates a lot of hot air, because I actually think the hot stove probably creates more hot air than anything. So it's very very accurate in that way. But I liked it, DV. You may have it. You may if this whole broadcasting thing doesn't work out, maybe I can teach the youngsters about the hot stove. But anyway, and my fifth graders today were all like, "Gosh, we want to watch your show again." They were wanting to watch my highlights of my show. We're glad you're along. This is Talking Baseball Australia Live. My name's Dan Vaughn. Paul Morgan with you. This is going to be pretty quick. We're going to blow through what's been happening this week because we're in that time. We're in that window now where everybody's just starting to sign them. Just it's who can sign, who can get who. And most of the teams have all been fairly steady, but it's really picking up. And I want to start off. First off, I asked the question earlier, partner, and I'll just ask you: what do you think, hot stove wise? Do you think anyone right now? I mean, we kind of agreed last week that Melbourne was kind of doing what they do. Anybody else out there before we dive into these headlines?
that's standing out to you that's you're going, I'm looking forward to seeing this roster to play?
I am Adelaide. I'm looking forward to playing as well. I still think Melbourne are probably ahead of the curve of everyone at the moment. I still think you'd have Melbourne up there as winning the hot stove thus far. But look, I know we'll talk through the transactions. I like one of the pieces that Adelaide has, or the only piece this week that Adelaide has added. I like what they're doing as well. They've got that whole Australian a lot of Team Australia arms in there as well. So I'd go Melbourne from Adelaide. You, DV?
I kind of course, obviously, Melbourne is the way that we've been talking about. I'm with you. I find Adelaide intriguing. You got to remember that they were right there last year on the cusp. They were in the finals. I think that's exciting. I think that the flashiness of obviously the big league signings of Auckland are pretty exciting. But I think Adelaide lurking in the weeds. Although I do like, and this is what makes this league so fun. We can make a case for a lot of folks. But then I looked this week, and we're going to get to the Erasmus signing in a moment with Brisbane. But Brisbane kind of is also looking in the weeds too. I mean, they just kind of steadily done what they do. So I would say Adelaide and maybe right behind them Brisbane, the two I would think of. And let's start with what's been going on. We will start with actually, I'm kind of got them in order here. Actually, this is not the headline, but we'll go ahead and I'm going to flip flop them here. This is not the headline of the day. This is actually from yesterday. But a young Australian catcher, Chris Burke, re-signed 4th season. This kid's 19. He's been playing for 4 seasons. I mean, that jumped out at me right there. But we talk about this. And when these rosters are made up, you got to have your complementary pieces, these youngsters. This is a guy you got to have. World select guy, had some time with under 15s, under 18s. This is your future national team member, I would think, down the road. And this is just one of those guys you got to have. A nice pickup there, and just to get the band back together, the young catcher Burke.
Yeah, we talked about it last week with Alan Deesam becoming the manager, who's going to be behind the dish for the Aces. So nice to see Burke involved as well. For a moment there with the hot stove, I thought, will they have a play at Alex Hall or not? They had the Morley Eagles ties with Luke Hughes, or I thought maybe he might go over there as well. But yeah, good pickup, and I like what I see there. But and this guy here on the screen now, DV, he's the one that. Boy, I think there's so much upside to him. There's so much upside. I think the Heat have let this one slip. I don't know what's happened, but this is the second pitcher that the Heat have let go, and it's not great.
It's an interesting move. I will say that. I'm with you on that. Again, we're not trying to dogpile anybody either, so don't take it that way. But this is if you're talking about a guy like Burke being a young gun. This is one of those kind of guys too. You're thinking you need these pieces, and I've always liked Noonborn. I think he's a young guy that again, as you said, has a high upside. I mean, this is a guy that I mean, Giants fans should be pretty fired up to have. I mean, I don't know the story there. I don't think here's the deal. We know Lachlandale well, and Lachlan's probably watching. He was watching earlier. We're going to have him on as his roster comes together. We'll get him on, and we'll talk more with him as I'm actually pulling up the chat here to kind of see what I missed. But we're going to get the folks in Perth as they kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, play catch up, I suppose. We'll get that. I will say this. If you're a Heat fan, I will say this. Lachlandale has proven time and time again the ability to put together a roster. Now, yes, he's a mate of ours, but he's proven time and time again. I hate to see this young man go, but he's proven time and time again being able to put together a roster. So, are you talking me off the ledge, partner, or am I too close to the ledge here?
No. I think I think Newborn is he's a terrific young guy as well as just as a person in general. He's a terrific young guy, and look, he's a guy that he was part of the college system up in North Iowa, came back to Perth. Probably looking for an affiliation deal. Of course, was part of Team Australia when they took on the Doosan Bears. Really is at that cusp though, and I guess for Mitch's standpoint, I actually know nothing about any of this, to be perfectly honest. But I would assume that perhaps he didn't feel like he didn't get enough opportunity last season, and maybe in Adelaide that the opportunity to throw a bit more is there. But yeah, an opportunity big time.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention too. This is not uncommon for this Victoria Western Australia deal. He's not the first, obviously, to go.
No.
I remember, obviously D. San Miguel was the biggie a few years back. But you've got, I guess, Scott Mitchinson, who relocated there. And remember, Scott Plague was living in Victoria, going back and forth for one season. And there may be something behind the scenes there. We're going to find out. There may be something behind the scenes as well. Maybe perhaps he's, that it's a situation where he is going to be there. I mean, that all could go into it as well. And, that maybe, by the way, that poem, the word was Jove is God. I appreciate that, GM. I could count on my English professor wife to know that because I read the poem and didn't even know what Jove meant. I was like, what does that mean? So that makes sense. But, yeah, that's a tough one. Let's continue down the transaction sheet here. A big leaguer coming to the mix as we move down. We're just basically going, it's pretty basically going to order. Drew Anderson pitched for the White Sox this last month, as a matter of fact. He was going to find himself with the Aces again. And I think this is one of those that kind of got lost in the shuffle because some of the younger pieces, and maybe he's not recognized. Maybe he's not a guy that was in the big leagues for 2 or 3 years. But he's a guy that was in the big leagues recently, and I should probably he's probably on top form, right-hander, 4 hits and one and a third, his only appearance to the White Sox in the 8th, but part of a very deep White Sox organization who, by the way, is a sleeper for a lot of folks in the big leagues this year in the postseason. But a big leaguer recently, I think this is a bigger piece of news than maybe a guy that was in the big leagues 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and you're right, DV. And it's not that often that you get guys come who are in the big leagues. As you say, it was there this year. And the White Sox are not like the White Sox of 5 or 6 years ago. They're a real, as you say, Dan, they're a sleeper team. There's no reason why they couldn't possibly win the World Series this year. And this is another, this is another one, Dan, that the Aces are they're like got their octopus tentacles throughout North America. And they're just, they are just so far ahead of any other team at the moment in terms of just recruiting in North America. It's unreal.
And that's something we talked about last week in detail. And Mick Warren, for example, I remember I talked about the whole staff, the whole front office. They made their trips over there. But you throw in their players who played North America, their young prospects who are over there in North America, this front office's belief in North America, you're right. It's like tentacles everywhere, and it's huge. And Alan De San Miguel was quoted. I'm kind of paraphrasing his quote, but he's like, "Hey, how often do you get a chance to see a guy who's the big leagues last month? You're going to get a chance to see one." I'm impressed. I mean, what they're doing. I mean, we rave about what they've done, and no doubt that the Claxton Shield was theirs for that reason. So all good there. Another one we were talking. This is a guy I've always loved. I mean, I've always loved. I mean, there's certain names. The Perkins name comes up. The Nielsen name comes up. The Kennelly name, the Perkins name. Those are names that when I hear these names, certain names in this league, I like. That's a good ball player. Kyle Perkins going from Canberra to the Aces as well.
I know.
What's up with that?
It's unreal, David. In a city that's in lockdown too. There's nothing appealing about the city right now. They're still starting to put him. They can't even go anywhere.
Hey, you guys we'll come lock down there. What do you guys want us to do? You want us to sell food or beverage? We'll do that. I mean, we will come. I mean, heck, we'll come lock down with you guys. But again, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it was funny last week we talked about, remember we had, if we wind the clock, we talked about, names in franchises and we mentioned Perth is Kennelly's and, you've got these guys and Perkins was the ones that come to mind in Canberra and then it always happens. Like, mark my word, like in about 2 hours of time, you'll see a bunch of transactions happen again. Yep. We just missed the show, but it's
we'll close our eyes and boom, the Aces just signed 4 more. But I want to give you the quote. I love this quote, and I'd love to get him on the show because I'd love to find out. And I'm reaching out to Colin Willis to get him on the show in a couple of weeks. But I want to find out what goes in. I think this quote tells you a lot right here. He says the culture environment that Melbourne has created is second to none, and I'm proud to be an ace. And how many times have you and I said that one word, culture? It goes a long way. I think that, I mean, it's X's and O's or balls and strikes or how you make your lineup card. That's one thing. But culture, and that tells me that's a young man who that knows it's important in this game, that culture matters.
Yeah, and it's crazy as well, DV, because you look from afar, you sort of, and we've had the privilege of being able to go around to all these stadiums in Australia and spend some time with these ball clubs, and I would have thought the culture was pretty strong in Canberra and the Cavalry as well, and but like this show is not, it's not an Aces love fest, but it's just like
no,
they are just they are
no.
just not that they are just absolutely not missing a beat from a team that was, if you rewind the clock back a couple of years ago, they had a new ownership group that they were going to Albert Park. It sort of all fell on a hole. They're looking for new owners, got new owners, have a clear path, the Mick Werns or the Luke Hughes, these guys, the Sam Miguel's, don't forget they got the Peter Moylans of the world over there as well.
Oh, yeah.
And they have just placed themselves in such a great spot. And
Justin Huber, I mean, guys like that. I mean, these are guys that, I mean, and I will take you back, and I'll pull, because there was a time they came to the West to close out the season. I'm going to get my years wrong here, but I know they did 12-13. I believe 16-17 and maybe 15, back-to-back years, 15-16, 16-17. And they came West in three of those times. Two of them, they were not in the mix. One, they had to come in and win to get in, and they didn't. And the other two times, they came in at the end of the season. But you saw some pieces there. We saw a young Lewis Thorpe, for example. We saw some young kids. But it took that nucleus. It took the North American nucleus, a cultural change, and all that into one big, as we call it in the States, gumbo. Gumbo, you throw it all in one big thing, one big pot, and that's what makes the whole thing taste great. And that's what's happened. They've got this great baseball gumbo, and we've seen that over the years. So speaking of club, that a guy that I love this guy. This is a guy for Brisbane, Justin Erasmus. He talk about some track record. This is a guy that's seen baseball all over the world. He's played, basically 3 different continents. 3, 4. Am I missing one? Maybe at least, maybe 4 if you count South Africa where he grew up. But back moved to Australia when he's younger. But this is a guy that is pitched at a high level, and he's also part of that group that's won Claxton Shields. If you're a Brisbane fan, this is one of those guys, those links that got you those shields. This is an A+ signing, I would think.
I agree with you, DV. It's a nice signing for the Bandits, and it's he's another one. He's another one of those pieces. He's a Darryl George in Melbourne. He's a Tim Kennelly in Perth. It's Justin Erasmus in Brisbane. Like that. That's just. But it's it's just nice to get this stuff out there, and know who's coming back and know who's not. But he seems like he's been around since the start of the ABL, and he keeps on going. But
he's got to close in on Matt Williams' record for most pitching appearances. My notes tell me right here, as I'd forgotten even to mention that 30-year-old right-hander made 11 appearances last year. But he's a guy, when I close my eyes, think of the Bandits and think of him and guys like Sutherland and the Nielsen's, those kind of names pop into my head when I think about those Brisbane Bandits. But big one. One I don't have a photo of, but I want to mention the Bandits too have dug into the Japanese pool. Masura Nakamura joined the Bandits as he returns to the Australian Baseball League. Spent 10 seasons with the Ham Fighters in the Nippon He played in the Japanese big leagues. This is a guy that's got big league pedigree in Japan, compiling a 4.07 in 10 years ERA, 10-year career in the big leagues over there, off and on. 2010 was his best, was his debut year. 60 appearances, 51 starts that year. 28-year-old from Japan again, Masura Nakamura. Do you know much about him? I know the name. I know him because I remember looking up and following, especially after Yu Darvish signed or was posted in the States back prior to that, I started looking at the Ham Fighters roster more often. I do know the name. This is a guy that's got some track record, and he's got the pedigree in the Japanese big leagues, and also will help that depth for Brisbane.
He'll be dangerous as well. And you know, I imagine the next week or so, and we know that Brisbane have, you know, they have a link to, I think they had a link with Taiwan and now sort of Japan as well. So I'd imagine you'll see a couple more pitches come out of Japan and Taiwan and various other parts of the Asia region in the next couple of weeks. But just again, explosive players and fun to watch, and it's. Yeah, it's still hot, that stove though, DV, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still hot. Yeah, we're going to have Mark Reddy on. Mark Reddy is going to be on with us next week. As a matter of fact, we're working that out right now. I think I told you this, Paul, in my text, but Mark and I are working at a time to tape one interview for next Friday's show, so we're going to work on that. But looking for Mark, appreciate taking the time to do that for us too. But we'll get more insight into Brisbane. It's been also a busy week for them. Wrapping things up, we kind of get the rest of the hot stove here. Let's see here. Dean Aldridge, boost the bullpen for Canberra. You see him on the screen there. 26-year-old, 9 appearances last year for the Blue Sox. He's coming over from Sydney. I believe, if memory serves, he's a Tiger farmhand. I believe that sounds correct. Played with the Tigers organization back in the mid-2000, 2012 or so. Mostly a reliever in the Tigers system, but New South Wales, 3 state league appearances from Manly last year, and he's coming over to Canberra. He'll join the boss man, Manaroa, who's there as well as they're at the nation's capital. But there is what. Let me just stop here, and we didn't see this 10 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever. 10 years ago we weren't doing this, but we didn't see this 5-6 years ago. You're seeing it. I remember it was a big deal when Boss went from one place to another, but now you're seeing guys cross state lines. And that's something you and I championed early on. I'm glad to see that, aren't you?
Yeah, I think if memory serves me, I think it was Matt Williams who was
yes.
the first one who went from Sydney to Adelaide.
Adelaide, yeah.
In memory serves, and then and that sort of was because it's probably the first 3 or 4 seasons of the ABL. I don't think really anyone ever moved anywhere, and then it was Matt Williams moved. I remember that being such a big deal that someone was huge, changing teams, because it was still so much of that Claxton Shield model, which of course was the state-based competitions at Western Australia. So it's it'd be unheard of if the NFL went to if there was state championships and Clayton Kershaw was pitching for Texas, it'd be unheard of if he went and signed for Ohio or something.
Yeah,
so they moved away from that model, and now I guess I guess the guys are sort of looking at, like smartly, they're looking at sort of, is this where's the best opportunity for me as a professional ball player? Where's the opportunity for me from a work standpoint? Am I, and this is sort of where, Melbourne have obviously picked up a lot of momentum. They're selling the sizzle well and reaping their rewards. And this is another nice little piece, DV.
But Sydney goes and picks up a AAA guy in the form of Jacob Robson. He's a Canadian, native of Canada. Maybe remember Russ Darville played in the league last year, part of the national team of Canada. This gentleman also played on the Canadian national team as well. Of course, Canada's got a very solid top 10 World Baseball Classic side as well. He's played in that high level AAA last year at Toledo, which is in the International League. Toledo's where, of course, wasn't work. Saupold pitched there back in AAA when he was in the Tigers. That's their club. Last year, he hit 267 in 58 driven in 2019. Left-handed hitter, doubled 21 times, tripled 3, 9 homers. He ought to really he ought to play well in the league as far as power numbers. I think he's my early sleeper for the batting champion. I think this is the kind of guy that you'd see should jump right in the ABL, do very well. He was also a Tigers organizational all-star a couple of times. I mean, this guy's got plenty of time at AA, AAA. He also played, you've heard me talk about this before, guys. He played in the Southeastern Conference, one of the 2 best baseball conferences, maybe 3, collegiately in Division I of the States. The SEC, the Big 12, and the Pac-10 are pretty much Pac-12 now. But Mississippi State is where he played. The same school Dak Prescott Cowboys great, played football that. But Miss State hit 290 in college. It's a guy that is played in the Dominican Republic as well. I mean, these are the kind of guys you look at him, and I think this is guys could be a batting title contender right away. This is a great signing to go on that lineup card that City's already got a pretty deep card as well.
It was when you were talking, Dan, immediately as sort of digesting his ability, my thoughts straight away went, boy, this guy is absolutely made for the ABL, isn't he? This is the guy time and time again that we've seen win a batting title in the ABL.
Yeah,
so
he reminds me a bit with more experience. Although Brandon Tripp played a long time in the minor leagues, this is a guy that's going to be a younger version when Brandon Tripp was in the ABL back 13, 14. This guy right here, when Brandon Tripp played for Perth, this guy, when I look at those numbers, I'm thinking, yeah, Manny's a big deal for Sydney. And if you're Adam Dobb, you're like, but this guy right here is, even though he hadn't played in the big leagues, maybe the kind of guy that could put Sydney right in the mix as a top 2 club with his bat alone. This is that kind of player offense-wise. Also, one more. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to step on your toes there, bud.
I was just saying, I agree with you, DV. That's it.
Yeah, and the final piece, they also Michael Campbell re-signed as well. 5th ABL season, 282 hitter, 123 ABL ball games of those Blue Sox. Heart and soul of their ball club is what the quote was. He's one of those guys. He's one of your guys. You got to have your locals. This guy fits the mold. I kind of had slept on him a little bit too, but I looked his numbers up. Impressive in the ABL again, 282 in the league. 123 ball games, not too shabby. And you're putting pieces around him. It just makes your lineup card that much deeper.
Yeah, I've liked him for a long time. I think he's a great ball player, and I think that quite spot on. Again, when you think Sydney, like, he is probably the heart and soul of the ball club right now, and nice to see these little bit of pieces. And again, you put other pieces around at DV, and you start building out yourself a contender.
Yeah, you start with a contender, which is what you got to do. And one more, I want to, that pretty much wraps up the stove. And we're pretty much tail end of the show here, but I want to pull up one little thing here to give you guys quickly here. But as we wrap that up and pull that down, I think my script is correct. We are. We're a former Adelaide pitcher, David Holmberg. We mentioned him a little bit last week. We were talking about how Milwaukee was on the doorstep of winning an American Association title. You're going to hear a lot about the American Association this year in the ABL. Yeah. But Dave Holmberg he basically parlayed his winter season into a great summer season in North America, which is the goal. Remember, this is a winter season for North American players, including Australian players who play in North America. This is their tune-up time, and this gentleman he started game 1 and game 5. He took a no-hitter. This guy took a no-hitter into game 5 for the Milwaukee Milkmen into the 8th.
Washington swings a high fly to right. Colts are turning and looking, and that ball is long gone. Solo home run, David Washington. Milwaukee leads 1-0.
2-1. Champion as well.
Driven into left center field. Roaming back is Ryan Brett. He looks up, and that ball is long gone over the wall for a home run.
Today from the American Association, which I think
Washington, it's a high fly to left. Ryan Brett has back a few steps, maybe deep enough to score the run. Brett is underneath and he makes the catch. Tice tags at third, the throw comes in, it won't be in time. Tice scores. Sacrifice fly to our
today.
Great
Major League Baseball yesterday.
Swing and a miss, strike 3. And the Milwaukee Milkmen are champions of the American Association 2020.
So there'll be some partnerships, sharing rules.
And after this strange, challenging,
for players to go from
and very rewarding
ball. So big news today from the States as well, partner.
Yeah, well, you froze up, DV, so you might just have to rewind back to go talk about the MLB affiliation.
Sorry about that. I freeze up. Sorry about that, guys. But quickly to close this thing out here, there was big news today in the States. Major League Baseball announced that, of course, yesterday, the Independent Baseball Atlantic League was going to be part of not part of Big League Baseball. It's a focus league, a partnership. It's going to be a partnership with Major League Baseball, and that's what happened yesterday. Today, the Frontier and the American Association, both those leagues, also signed on to be partners. It's not they're not going to be affiliated with, say, the Yankees or Dodgers, but it's a larger affiliation with Major League Baseball. So, for example, the Kansas City T-Bones will have a affiliation with all of Major League Baseball, make it easier for players to come and go. Play rules, maybe something they want to experiment with. They'll try it down at the American Association. So very big for players coming from Australia to play in North America, and for players in the ABL going over. It's a great opportunity to get even more eyeballs on you from Major League Baseball. So that happening today as well. Final thoughts there, partner, on the Hot Stove Special, I guess it was.
Yeah, no, I think the stove keeps on rolling. And the last question I was going to ask you, DV, unscripted, but we don't really talk about Major League Baseball much at the moment, but that's almost next week we move into the postseason. Who, for anyone out there, who's your pick, and who's the best value roughie in your opinion?
You know, I love the White Sox story. I think that's an interesting story, and I shouldn't say story. It's not the story. They just played good baseball. I like that club. I think this is one of those rare years where a lot of times you can kind of throw the records out. I really believe this year you could put any team in that 6 team or 8 in each league in a hat, draw a name out. You'd probably have a good chance to win. Usually it's not that way, but I think this year you've got a really good chance, especially past the wild card round. Like the White Sox, especially. I don't know. They stand out to me. They've been as consistent of a ball club there's been the last 5 or 6, 7 weeks, which is basically what the whole season's been. That's where I like. What about you?
I still like the Minnesota Twins. I still think they've got something going. I like the White Sox as well. The problem is when you look at the brackets now, if the season ended today, they take on the Yankees, and the Yankees, they were terrible for a while. Then they went on that 11-game win streak or something and sort of peaking at the right time. I like them. Go Cubs, go might be okay too.
Well, and here's the deal too, and I think what you're seeing, this is what makes this season such a hard thing to make if you want to be a punter and make a wager on this, because these small sample sizes you don't really know what to go by, and it really could be literally. It happens every year. One team gets really hot late, but this year more than any team can get hot late and catch lightning in a bottle, and boom. Can win. That's what makes this thing so tricky to pick, because there's not a long body of work to say this has been going on all year, because, as you mentioned, the Yankees have been playing really, really good late. They didn't play good for a while. They're playing good now. And, that's how you start, how you finish, so to speak. But also, I believe in the great game of baseball that your whole body of work, if you're consistently playing well all year, winning series, you should be okay. But should be fun, man. We're going to talk a little bit more about it next week, right?
Yeah, they'll be taking that right-hand turn into the postseason, and World Series baseball comes down the road to you soon, DV. Just down the road.
I'll drive by and wave.
And they're saying that I read that there's fans could be in the stadium for postseason, which is cool.
That's the talk. That's the talk. We think there'll be something. We're not sure what exactly, but we'll find out. But hey, you know what? We turned out okay. This little show wasn't too bad, I guess, right?
Yeah. Hey, we aimed for 15 minutes, went 50 minutes, but that's what we do. So.
Well, we started late. Yeah, we were supposed to go at 20 minutes. We can't seem to go. We can't seem to do that. Next week, I mentioned we'll have a Brisbane Bandit centric. We won't be all Brisbane Bandits, but we are going to talk to Mark Reedy next week about the Bandits and about what he's been doing there. We'll talk about the logo change and color, the changes they went through, and just the culture. I love their culture too. We've kind of slept on them a little bit. I think we're looking forward to hearing from him, and I love looking forward to hearing more about his letter to the fans and all that. So that'll be next week on the show. Same time, same place, right, partner?
Sounds good to me, DV.
All right, mate. I'll see you down the road, my friend.
Will do. Thank you all.
There he is. Paul Morgan, it's time to shut this thing down, folks. Baseball's best mate, Talking Baseball Australia. Of course, follow Paul on Twitter at Paul Morgs. I'm at Dan Vaughn Jr. Of course, you can also follow us at Talking Baseball Australia, at TB Australia, and also our Facebook page. You're watching us right now live. We're glad you're here. Again, thanks for joining us, for stopping by for, would it be for 1 minute, 5 minutes, the whole show. If you're watching on replay, thank you. Share it. Tell folks about us. Our passion is your passion. It's baseball's best mate, Talking Baseball Australia. The time I hate the most is when we had to roll the close. So let's roll it and shut this thing down for a week. We'll see you guys next week on Talking Baseball Australia Live, baseball's best mate.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root. Root, root,